But this was before we knew she really had COVID. But in the back of
Yeah.
my mind, I thought she probably did, but we didn't. She wasn't tested at this point. And so I said, so I fought with him, and he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want home health." And so the day went on and on. Long story short, at the end of the day, he finally had called home health. And so, but then when home health came, they didn't know she had COVID. We didn't know. And so they allowed their worker to come, thank God.
Yeah.
And so fast forward 2 more days, and I ended up knowing Mama was really quickly going downhill. And I need to know who all has COVID, who all doesn't. So I wanted Mama tested, and I'd been in her presence crying in her face for days. And so I needed the other caregivers tested. So when that happened, it was the same day we started thinking we better contact hospice because we were really quickly going downhill, and the doctor was MIA, and I had to get a friend to FaceTime me that was a pulmonologist, and it was a fight every day to try to get oxygen.
Yeah.
And so we ended up getting people tested at the same time. The hospice people showed up to just get her on board, because that's a process that I didn't realize. And so when they showed up, they saw that Mama might be COVID pending, and they left. They didn't even give her a proper evaluation. And so here I am, like, in the middle of all this, no hospital. I've got home health. They're showing up, but the doctor's MIA. He had given her 1 bag of fluids.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what do we do? So my daughter, that was the PA, God bless her, she gets on a plane when it was a no-no, because this was in May 2020. This was early on. She gets on a plane when it was a no-no, leaves 3 little ones, was still nursing one. She didn't bat an eye. She got on the plane to come be there for her grandmother. And hospice literally dropped medicine off at the door. And she had to administer to her own grandmother. So it was very, very challenging. And people could say, why didn't you drop her off at the ER? And you go back and forth on shoulda, coulda, woulda. And you're in the moment thinking, I can't stand seeing my mom. Maybe she would have been in a hallway, And, with Alzheimer's, they're scared.
Yeah. And certainly at great risk for additional exposure to a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Yes. So we ended up keeping her at home, and my daughter was, were there. And we had one caregiver that literally was laying in the bed with her when she died. And she ended up with COVID. I ended up with COVID, and her husband almost died. So it was just a very difficult time. And then, as during that time, when you need community and you need hugs and we're from the South, you need that comfort food. None of that happened. Everybody was robbed proper funerals. And I had planned my mama's for 2 years because she was that special of a lady. She did nothing but give her life to others. And so I was like, she is going to have the best send-off in the world. And it didn't happen. And I couldn't even get to her funeral because I had COVID, and it was a small, tiny little gathering in North Carolina. And it was a hard time. And I'm sure, and people have stories that are even a lot more traumatic than mine. And so my heart breaks for people. And so I wanted to write this book, first of all, to honor my mom, but I wanted to let people know they're not alone, and that, I feel bad for those that did drop them off and never saw their parent again. At least I did see my mom until the day before she died. I got COVID, and I was told not to go back down there, so I FaceTimed her, and that was a lot of guilt. But everybody has so many stories, and if we don't tell them, we're not going to learn anything from them,
It is really critical to share the stories and that people know that this is a regular thing that usually this is a stage that just happens usually to one extent or another. And I think it's really important that we absorb that as a culture. You went through this for 8 years, and tens of millions of people are going through this now, and it's likely that most people to one degree or another will go through similar things. Having gone through that experience, having seen the ins and outs of the system where you experienced it, what do you think are the improvements that can be made, that we as a country can implement in order to make this thing that most of us go through more bearable, more humane?
I don't know. I just think that society has such little regard for the elderly. And it's like, you have to, there were so many situations, not when Mama was just dying with COVID, but when I would take her to the hospital and they would just like, oh, well, she's 91, she's going to die anyway, you just take her home, And it was like, she had a soul, a beautiful soul. She was not on any medications. And it was like, they're just disregarded, and people are living longer, and it's just important that we treat them with dignity and respect, especially those last days, on this side of heaven. And it's like, I don't know what the answer is for the future, but people are living longer, and it's just I learned that you really have to fight for your loved ones, just like you do a child, and I'm sure you have to with your child.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't always just listen. I've had to learn that, my mama grew up where, and I learned from her that to go the opposite way, you listen to what the preacher says, you listen to what the teacher says, you listen to what the doctor says. You don't have, now I learned you get more opinions. Yeah. You trust your gut. You listen to your gut and you fight for them.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we have to, but you have to. You have to be the one that's there for them and fight for them, or else they're just getting left alone, these elderly people.
Yeah, and I really do think that folks like you and folks like my wife and I, certainly it has been the experience that we know most about the situation for those to whom we provide care. And those outside of that circle, even though they may have like a lot of education and a lot of degrees, it does not always bear on the situation for this particular individual. There is no one who knows that person better than you as that primary caregiver.
That is so true. And I'm glad you said that, because every individual is different. It's like a school teacher treating every child the same.
Yeah.
God made us all different. And the person, the parents and the caregivers are the ones that know that individual.
Yeah.
And whoever, doctors, whatever, they need to listen more.
Absolutely.
They don't have time. The system's broken. Yeah. They don't have time. It's run to this patient, run to this, treat the symptom, don't get to the bottom of it. It's just a broken system, I really think. And I think it's even more broken since COVID.
No, I agree. I think it's broken, and the way that we can start to heal it really is by empowering caregivers, giving them as many resources as possible, because they're in the position to make the best decisions about this, and to let them know, as you are with your book, that they are not alone. Because again, I can't emphasize it enough, this happens so often. This is a regular part of life in this country. Marsha Grayhill, she is the author of Grief and Grits, A Daughter's Journey of Love and Loss When the World Was Upside Down. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and thank you so much for being and having been a caregiver.
Thanks. And I would love for listeners to connect with me at marshagrayhill.com. And thanks so much for having me.
Yes, marshagrayhill.com. Please go there. Please check out this book. And thank you again so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate that you do. I want to let you know that this show is a production of Two Squared Media Productions. You can find out more about that particular company at twosquaredmediaproductions.com. I want to thank Ace Elson and Rosabelle Hine, who are the producers. And until next time, enjoy the day.